Welcome to a football show, Thursday edition. Nick Suss, Braden Gall, brought to you, of course, by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Eddie, already in the comments section. Dak Prescott isn't a real option, LOL.
He is laughing out loud. It's 9:04 a.m. and he is laughing at us.
It's got to be weird in the whatever office, Eddie, you work in, if you're just like lulzing the whole time around all your different people. Does anyone go to an office anymore? I don't know. Nick and I don't.
I do.
That's true. That's
4 days a week. Yeah,
that's true. You do. Part of the time. Although in the off season, you're probably there a lot more, I imagine. All right. So lots of stuff to get to today. In fact, I'm so excited about this show, Nick. And not only do I get to see your lovely face and visit Geek Corner with you, we're going to Fantasyland today as well, because the Dak Prescott story, I was jokingly throwing out trade options. I do feel like if you start a tweet with "hear me out," people should realize that it's just sort of like off the cuff. It's not really what I was thinking. I was watching the Vikings game, and anytime the Vikings are losing in a playoff game that ugly, as a Packers fan, I'm very excited about that. So I was just having a good time. Saw the Deion Sanders report that Jerry Jones might be interested. The denial from Deion Sanders. And then, of course, my brain immediately starts working. I kind of throw something out on Twitter about a trade. I got not quite ratioed, but a lot of folks just the responses were so hundreds of responses, Nick, that were negative. And I don't want to sit here and have a conversation with you about the actual probability of acquiring Dak Prescott. I think it's very low. But I am curious why Titans fans aren't seeing the rationale and the logic and the calculus behind a move like that. So I wanted to get into that with you because you wrote a long article, Tennessean.com, about sort of all the 26 different options.
Yeah, I came up with 26 options the Titans can go for at quarterback next year, ranging from things that will make you rip your hair out to things that will make you rip your hair out with glee.
Yeah, 10 different tiers, 26 different options. Ironically, my favorite draft option, you did not even put in out of the 26. So I'm adding a 27th to the list. So we're going to do that. That's a major part of the show is going to be sort of looking at all these different options and what is the right strategy. Again, I would say maybe 25% of the responses I get. And yes, I realize Twitter is not real life and should not be the assignment desk of the world, but here we are. About 25% of the responses I got were sort of in I like the idea, but not this particular part of the trade, which is exactly what I was looking for. Like, I want folks to see the idea and the concept, not the actual particulars. I am not a walking trade valuation calculator. I've never worked in the general manager's office. So despite all the knowledge I have about NFL front office palace intrigue. So I want to get into that with you, number one. We'll talk about the obsession with Vrabel. Paul Kaharski, great article about the obsession inside the walls of the Tennessee Titans organization with Mike Vrabel. The Ohio State-Notre Dame game is going to happen on Monday night, so I got to ask you about that. And, of course, an update on the Titans general manager search, which is now at time of taping. It is not concluded. It's second round of in-person interviews, but they will be concluded by the end of work on Thursday. The 6 names, so we'll get to all of that. Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, 2 great, amazing local companies. Folks, local companies is what makes the world go round. It's what makes community go round. It's how you build relationships with people. It's how you keep the dollars inside your community and spinning around and around. Like, don't send them out to multinational corporations. Send them to Sinkers Beverages, Bluegrass Beverages up in Hendersonville. That's a local company for almost 90 years, has been serving the 2 communities here in Nashville. So go support good local businesses that also support all of you, Titans and Predators and Nashville SC. They support good local sports and local small companies like 440 Sports. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Look, they are awesome and they do care about the community and they do pay attention to all this stuff. But here's the bottom line. It is the best meat in the city. That's it. I don't have to say anything else. It's the best Black Hawk Farms Wagyu beef brisket you will ever have. So just go to Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. It's 10 minutes from Nissan Stadium. Go check it out.
Before we get into it, can I tell a really, really dumb story real quick about the opposite of the best meat in the city? Exact opposite.
Please don't tell me about your fast food evening choices.
No. This is not about me. This is about me annoying people. As a just joke to make myself happy, I'm in a group chat with 6 other people. And for Christmas this year, I sent all of them a Christmas card with a Zodiac style fill in the blank that they have to put all 6 of their cards together to figure out a message. And it took them 2 weeks. And last night they finally figured out that the message was just the address of the Arby's at Times Square in New York. It is the greatest way I've ever wasted loved ones' times. I am so happy I pulled it off. I'm going to keep doing this because it makes me so happy. And I used the United States mail to do this. So that's what I do when I'm not covering GM searches, is I defraud the United States mail by sending out the address to the Arby's at Times Square.
You're not defrauding. That is what our tax dollars are going to, is a postal service that works incredibly well, actually.
Yeah.
Like astonishingly well, the postal service. You need a hobby also, and maybe some kids. I don't know.
I think that constantly making my friends Google the address of the Arby's on 8th Avenue in New York City is a great hobby.
Ed Henry says drafting Shedeur equals Hard Knocks. Maybe could be worse for the team from an exposure standpoint. Eddie says, y'all think we get a new super scout by Monday? There's a really good chance they've hired their assistant general manager by the end of the weekend. Like I would
think so too.
I would kind of be surprised if they have not made an announcement by probably Saturday. My understanding is when they conclude today, they will all meet on Friday, gather together, make their final decisions, maybe another conversation or two on Saturday with the final two or something like that. And then by Sunday, my guess is that we'll have an answer, but maybe faster. Maybe they already know. Maybe it's always been John Eric Sullivan because he was in Green Bay with Chad Brinker, and that's what he's wanted to do the entire time.
Yeah, this is a little bit of tea leaves reading, but I think that they were a little surprised that the John Eric Sullivan one didn't happen on that Sunday, that it had to be delayed to Monday. So I think that their plan was to be done by Friday, that they wanted it done this week, and then that delayed it and sent everything back a day on schedule. So it might take a little bit longer. But I would think that the goal is to be done by Sunday.
So I will give you the list of 6. I'll give you a quick bio, and then I want you to sort of dive in a little bit deeper into what you think they bring to the table. This doesn't have to be a long conversation. We can move on to the more interesting quarterback stuff, because the bottom line is it's almost impossible to know how good any of these people are at their job. It just is. Rand Carthon, I mean, how many general managers, not just Rand, like how many general managers don't do a good job? And how many coaches are people spend millions of dollars on drafting players, hiring coaches, and hiring GMs, and they're wrong all the time. So
yes,
it's almost impossible to know who's going to do a great job. Ian Cunningham, assistant general manager for the Chicago Bears. He has just finished his 3rd season there. He's been in the front office for both Baltimore and Philadelphia, won 2 Super Bowls there, 17 years in the NFL, ops and personnel background. He was also in the running when Rand Carthon was hired. He has been there in Chicago for 3 years. Mike Borgonzi, of course, close friends with Chad Brinker, assistant general manager for Kansas City. He has been there for 16 years. And not just in the same role, which I think is important to note about another candidate. He's basically done every single thing at Kansas City. Terrence Gray, the director of player personnel for the Buffalo Bills. He has been with Buffalo for 8 years, 11 years previously with Minnesota as a scout. He's also a college scout. He has also sort of worked his way up the ranks in Buffalo. Ed Dodds, the assistant general manager in Indianapolis, who looks like a retired police officer, 8 years at Indianapolis. The thing, he was in Seattle for 10 years before that. The thing I would note here is 7 straight seasons as an assistant general manager in the same role under Chris Ballard, and we can debate the merits of how good Indianapolis's personnel decisions have been. Some very good, some not so good. But I think being in the same role is a little interesting and worth noting. John Spytek, assistant general manager for Tampa Bay, and John Eric Sullivan, the VP of player personnel for Green Bay. Both of them will be interviewed in the 2nd round in person Thursday, today, at time of taping. They have not happened yet. So you kind of take this where you want to go, and I'll react to where you want to go with this in terms of how do you evaluate these guys and know who's the right choice and who's good or bad at this stuff?
When I was right around graduating college, I had a lot of friends who went to Georgia Tech, friends from high school, and they would lament to me a lot that they were really jealous that I did a job that I could prove I was good at. If you're like, you can send somebody an article and say, hey, I wrote this good article, prove it. And they were engineers, and they're like, I can't just like go build a bridge. Like,
I mean, it doesn't fall down after 30 years as proof, right?
Yeah, but they can't get a job on like, hey, look at this structural engineering I did. They just kind of have to be like, trust me, I know what I'm doing. And I thought you were going
to say your friends who went to Georgia Tech were complaining about the male-female ratio and the amount of math they had to do, but that was prior to graduation. That was not post-graduation. Okay. Now, so I think of this as a similar situation of like, there is absolutely no way to prove that you will be a good general manager
if you haven't been a good general manager before.
Yeah.
And if you have been a good general manager before, you're probably not available. Like, we can talk about the merits of Thomas Dimitroff. I think he has been a good general manager before, and I don't necessarily understand the dynamics of why this is or isn't. But, like, let's be real. Nobody actually knows if anybody's good at anything until we see it happen. So
how
we're
meta
going,
of you.
we're going off of just guesses and pedigrees. And, like, personally, if I was hiring a general manager, I would try to avoid hiring somebody who has been in one organization for a long time, or somebody who has only been in the organization that is considered to be the best organization or something like that, because you can't really separate what they've done from the success around them versus somebody who has jumped around 6-7 different spots or 3-4 different roles or whatever you want to see it. You would say, oh, well, they've taken this from them and that from these people and this or that. That's my philosophy, but I don't know if that's right or wrong. Like, I don't know if there's more good general managers who have come from one place. I went through, I wrote this down in another notebook that I don't have in front of me. Like, I went through the entire front office, Chad Brinker's first year in Green Bay, and looked at every single person who worked there in 2012, I think it would have been. And I think 7 of those people are still in Green Bay. And that's awesome. Green Bay is a place where you can stay and you can kind of develop a long-running history. And John Eric Sullivan is one of those people. But is that a good thing? Or is that just continuity for continuity's sake? I really don't know. And I'm not going to pretend to know.
I agree. And I think what you do is you try to look at some, like, characteristics and traits that you appreciate. And it's not even about the personality, which is certainly a lot of what we've been discussing with the previous Titans general manager, is sort of like all the stuff that's hard to quantify. We can look at the moves and say good or bad, or grade them on a scale of A to F or whatever. For example, Borgonzi in Kansas City, 16 years with the same organization. That is a good thing because Kansas City has been an elite organization in this thing. Number 2 good thing, he's done a lot of things. He continued to get promoted and got a bunch of jobs and continued to change roles, has a diversity of experiences and a lot of success in those roles. I think those are good things that you can kind of check off. For example, again, the Dodds thing at Indianapolis, it does make my spidey senses tingle a little bit that he was the assistant general manager for 7 years and nobody else in the NFL thought, got to get that guy. And maybe some of that's loyalty, the way Ben Johnson is being loyal to Dan Campbell, for example, as a coordinator. It happens, but it only happens for so long. If you are very good at your job in the NFL, you go through about 2 rounds of this stuff, and by the 3rd round, if you're great, you get plucked by somebody else to be given an opportunity. And so if he had been there for 3 years as the assistant GM, I'm not sure I'd be thinking like this. It's not fair because I don't know if he's good or bad.
Yeah.
Nobody does. But I do feel like 7 years as the same thing at an organization that hasn't exactly been a gold standard of success, that one's a little bit like, okay, not sure about that. But again, that's not even fair. That's just how I'm looking at it.
So I think you and I have similar ideas of how to judge people. And we were talking about this a little bit pre-show. I want you to get into your judgments, and then I will tell you mine.
Well, so that when the Titans send out the thing, they have the only real thing they put in there is sort of like it's the same stock copy. For those that don't get for those that don't get the emails, it's also on Titans Online. It's clear that they are putting the first like four paragraphs are the same thing. It's like, here's who's in the room: Amy Adams Strunk, Burke Nihill, Chad Brinker, Brian Callahan, and among others, I guess. But those are the 4 decision makers that they feel the need to call out that are in these rooms. Here's his position and his role. Then they give a little blurb. But the only thing they really put out there is like the headshot, right? Like the LinkedIn profile picture.
Sure.
And I just feel like every time I just am immediately, what's my instinct tell me this person is? Which is, again, completely superficial and unfair. So they sent out the Ian Cunningham, and I'm like, this guy runs the Shelby Community Center in East Nashville. Like, I trust this guy. He clearly is great with kids. He's all about people and family, and I would send my kids to go learn about bugs and birds at the Shelby Community Center with Ian Cunningham running it. So you see the picture. Then you see Ed Dodds, and you're like, this guy, he probably did 2 terms, two tours, excuse me, in the military. He came back. He was a police officer for a little while for MNPD. He's retired now, and he just looks like a retired police officer to me. Terrence Gray looks like a guy who's like a board member on a Fortune 500 company in Nashville, Tennessee. It's just so hilarious that my brain does this. It's not right or fair or anything. It's just I see the headshot and I go, oh, that guy clearly does this.
So
like Borgonzi looks like Chad Brinker's best friend. they look like each other. They got the hair. They just look like each other. And I find that to be hilarious to me.
So I will extrapolate here by stealing a game from one of my dearest friends, Connor Riley, who covers the University of Georgia. We play a game where we believe you can judge the future success of any NFL head coach or executive based on you look at them for the first time and you ask yourself, would they know what they are doing in a Home Depot? So you look at somebody and your first instinct, if they walked into a Home Depot, how would they behave? Would they be somebody that knows straight where to go? Would they need to ask for help? Would they be a little bit too cocky about knowing what they do? Do they go straight for the paint section and just look at samples? Do they know where the appliances are? You got to judge people based off of how would they handle themselves in a Home Depot. So I ask you this. You've seen the 6 headshots. Who do you think would know what to do in a Home Depot?
I think, Ed Dodds, I think would. For sure. I think Ed Dodds does. So you said overly confident walking into a Home Depot?
There are some people who are definitely overly confident who go in and they're like dismissing the employees. They're like, I don't need help. I run this Home Depot.
You don't
want those people. You don't want those people.
I don't love doing this. This feels like, other kinds of media content, but Mike Borgonzi looks like he would be overly confident in a Home Depot.
Okay.
In my opinion. I think John Eric Sullivan is the right Home Depot look.
Okay.
I think Ed Dodds is the right Home Depot look. Sure. I think Ian Cunningham. I think I could see I could see Home Depot knowledge. Terrence Gray. I don't know about Terrence Gray. He almost looks like too boardroom, too put together.
Yeah.
To be great in a Home Depot. I think that's an interesting strategy that I have yet to ever consider in my life. The Home Depot
run the Home Depot test. If you look at somebody and you're like, oh man, they would be lost in a Home Depot, you probably don't want them making decisions about your football team.
Lost. I don't see any of them that I feel would be lost in a Home Depot. Do you?
I don't think so. Probably not. You're right. There's probably more of the overconfident or the dissonance of doesn't belong.
You said Thomas Dimitrov.
Yeah.
He does not look like he walks into Home Depot with a plan.
No. Which is funny because Arthur Blank, isn't he the Home Depot guy?
Yes. Oh, the irony. I mean, look, does he know what to do in the fourth quarter when they're up by 28? I don't know. So we'll see. Look, I think I don't have a real list of priorities or favorites here. But I do think John Spytek and John Eric Sullivan would be my top 2. I think Ian Cunningham would be number 3, Borgonzi 4, Gray 5, Dodd 6. I think that would be my order. But again, what are we basing this off of? Not Home Depot tests, not what I think your other career was, but just based on sort of these really vague and nebulous factors about their careers. I don't.
Yeah.
John Eric Sullivan, Chad Brinker probably knows the most about him, and knowledge you would think in this situation is power to some degree.
Sure. Yeah. Again, if I am making a list, I think we have a similar top 3. I might have Cunningham a little bit higher just because I am allured by the pedigree of Philadelphia and Baltimore, which I probably respect as maybe the 2 best front offices in the NFL. But also Chicago stinks. So
right. And clearly Amy Adams Strunk and Burke Nihill have a good relationship with Ian Cunningham because he was a candidate last time. So
right.
Eric Sullivan and Cunningham might be the top 2. You might be right. Maybe I have Spytek at 3. Borgonzi, because of the relationship with Brinker, certainly is an option. That's not always the right reason to hire people. We've seen that problem in coaching ranks for years. Hiring your buddies is not always a good thing. That is for sure. So, but you're with me. We probably when Paul and I get together on the Monday show, we will be debating and discussing and analyzing who the new general manager is for the Tennessee Titans. Right?
Yep.
Follow up to that is how much does the role actually matter? The role itself is important. The person's brain and their knowledge and their experience and their decisions are important. I just mean how much of it is not going to still be on Chad Brinker. Maybe this is me taking the hyper non-cynical opinion, but I do think it's a
important thing. Like, I don't want to minimize, just because he is not the person breaking ties means he's not doing a job.
Yeah, right.
Like, I think we get caught up in this final say thing because it's fun, but like, what percentage of decisions do you think are made based off of a final say decision?
I mean, in life, I would say very, very few. Most businesses higher up, very, very few. Maybe tech companies, there's like one, oligarch running the whole thing who just decides what's going to happen. But I think in football, I agree with you. I think it's less about who decided ultimately to sort of like tip the scales in favor of drafting Will Levis. It's more of like, at some point, if things go well or things go wrong, you have to know who is responsible for this department.
Yes.
That's more what it is.
And I agree.
Yeah.
I believe that the person who is hired to be general manager will be the person who is in charge of setting the agenda. But I think Brinker will be the person who is in charge of deciding what the philosophy of the agenda will be. It's like having both a president and a CEO, which who reports to whom in that situation, I do not know. I am not a businessman. I have not been to business school. But
generally the president is not in charge. Like if you're talking about a big company, the CEO is the day-to-day manager and runner of the company who reports to the board of directors. Generally, the president is over the board of directors, generally speaking. But as we've learned through this process with the Titans and around the league, all of these titles are made up.
Yes,
they're all just made up. Correct.
So I will refrain from picking on the situation because it might work, but it is right. It is strange. It is very strange.
I think, and Paul wrote about this in his article today at paulkarski.com about the obsession inside the building and the obsession with Mike Vrabel. He's obviously rebuilding what he wanted up there in New England right now, which I believe I went back and listened. We had 2 shows last year, 2023 football season, I guess 2 seasons ago, where I went on this show and I said, I hope you are all prepared for Mike Vrabel to be the head coach of the New England Patriots. And that was like in October. And then in November, we did the whole thing again. But anyway, how about this? What is the difference between VP of player personnel and director of player personnel? Is director above or below the VP? Is the VP above the director?
I would imagine they are the exact same job.
There you go. Donnie says, I need Braden to text me show times because I'm always late. Haha. Donnie, here's the thing. Since August, so going on like 7 months now, Monday at 3 p.m. with Paul Karski, Thursday at 9 a.m. with Nick Suss. It's never changed. It's been the same every week, Monday and Thursday, but I do appreciate you tuning in. Ed says, isn't working with someone with some scouting grading system and philosophy important? Of course, I would assume they all have some philosophy and system. We don't know which ones are good.
And if you're talking about having like a similar foundation, I would say, 4 out of the 6 candidates left have either directly worked with Brinker or have worked with John Schneider or have worked with, John Dorsey. So all people who come from the exact same Green Bay background. So yes, almost everybody in this candidate pool will have a foundational background similar to what Brinker has, with the exceptions being, I don't think Spytek has, and I don't think Dodds has. It's Borgonzi who hasn't. So most everybody's going to have that foundation.
All right. Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, 2 great companies. Go support them. You can search Uber Eats and have Sinkers Beverages deliver that booze directly to your house. So while you're watching all kinds of NFL football games this weekend, hopefully they're closer than last weekend. And, of course, the championship game on Monday for college football. Make sure you use Uber Eats and search Sinkers Beverages. Have them deliver the booze directly to your house. And, of course, obviously, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, just Wednesday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., the best brisket you will have in the city, full stop. End of discussion. Everything else is great too, but that is what they're known for. And nobody in this city does cow very well. You need a guy from Texas like Pitmaster Bill, my guy, who's over there smoking meats for almost 30 years, raised in Texas, smoking meats in Texas the right way. So that's why he brought that brisket to Nashville. All right, Brinker head snake.
Do you think that's Chef Ran with a new?
All the Ran stands are changing all their things to Brinker, which is I'm fine with that. The clear-cut answer is Cam Ward. We'll get to that. Kenneth, At the end of the day, don't overcomplicate it. Take Cam Ward and turn your franchise around. If you like interceptions and playing outside of the system, sure. You get a little preview of my personal opinion of drafting a quarterback at number 1. All right, so you did this.
I did.
Tennessean.com. Go pay for good journalism.
I think this one's free. If you want to just drop the link on screen, go click.
It is. Oh, I could. Let me see if I can do that. I don't even know how do I do it now.
I don't know. I'm not going to make you improvise on the spot.
You need to do it. I can't do it and host the show. Here, I'll find it. You talk about the impetus to the story, and then we'll get to everything else.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to just do something where I get a list of names for myself. We're going to be spending a lot of this offseason talking about a lot of quarterbacks. And I could have made the list 30, 35 people long. There are some rookies that I left off, and I know Braden has a guy who I somehow ignored, and he's very frustrated with me. But so also angry. Just like so many free agents that could hit the market, that will hit the market. I don't know. I made a list of 26 of them, tiered from rookies who probably shouldn't get a shot to start, all the way down to, oh yeah, these guys, you feel pretty confident you're in the playoff chase next year if they're your quarterback. And so I think that if you want to think of it that way of, man, this would be a really tough project, all the way down to, oh, this feels like a great sure thing. That's how I kind of prioritized this list. And the top 2 guys on the list are guys that both of us will be realistic, I don't think are going to be Tennessee Titans. Yeah, they are very long shots.
So,
but do you want to start at 26? Do you want to
do that? Let's go 10 down to 1, and we can go kind of quickly with this because number 10 on your number 10, the 10th tier, the last tier is non-first round rookies. You have Dylan Gabriel, Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe. Two issues with your list here first before we talk about the merits of the idea. Jalen Milroe, I think, will be the best quarterback in this draft class if given the right system, and I think will be a first-round pick. But I could also see him going in the second round. I think he's very different than Dylan Gabriel, Jackson Dart. Quinn Ewers, a little bit better. The name that needs to be on there is Kyle McCord, unless he's announced in the last day that he's coming back to Syracuse. Kyle McCord has nothing left to prove. He spins it. He's accurate down the field. He processes. He set all kinds of ACC records. He's a 6'2", 215, 220 guy. I don't think he's a first-round pick. I don't think he's a second-round pick, but early third, late second, maybe. I could see it if you've stockpiled extra picks to go get him. But he is a guy that needs to sit probably for a year or two before giving him an opportunity. So there you go.
Yeah, he looks very good when he has very good receivers catching passes from him.
It's amazing how that works. Yeah. So not last on the list is all of these guys. I do like Milroe a lot, and I've said this on the show with PK. I like Milroe a lot if you had Todd Monken as your head coach. Yeah. If you had done the clean sweep and you were firing Callahan and Brinker and everybody else, and you brought in a whole new philosophy and you wanted to build a team and an organization around a skill set a la Jalen Hurts, I think Jalen Milroe will be an extraordinarily – I think he's better than Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. I think he has a better chance. He's a more talented athlete. He's not as accurate, but I think playing in Kalen DeBoer's system, I think he is going to be – if you want to build around him with a particular system, I think Milroe is a very intriguing option.
And I'll add real quick about Dart. If you are a coach good enough to unteach the instincts that Lane Kiffin instilled upon him, he might have the most talented arm in this pure draft. He's got a great arm.
Milroe's arm also incredible.
Fantastic.
I think McCord's is the most NFL accurate, meaning outside the hash, down the seams, accuracy on the back shoulder fades. I think McCord's has got the best one of those. All right, number 9, run it back.
One sentence on tier 9.
Run it back with old guy. Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen, but it's a possibility.
Number 8, journeyman, and there's a lot of different mileage on these guys. You put Desmond Ridder, I wouldn't even call him a journeyman. Jacoby Brissett, Andy Dalton, Carson Wentz. I think they all count. I think Drew Lock and Mac Jones, I don't know if they count. Jimmy G counts. Jameis Winston counts. I think you could do worse.
Yeah, I would agree that you could do worse objectively. If you end up with any of these guys, I would guess it's their starting week 1 because you drafted a young quarterback who you want to sit for a little while. I would not imagine this is a long-term solution, but of those players, I would personally prefer Garoppolo.
Interesting. So here's the thing. If they were to draft a quarterback with the first pick or anywhere in the first round, top 10, let's say, I would like any of the older guys who are sort of stable. Yeah. Jacoby Brissett, Andy Dalton, Carson Wentz. If you are drafted, if you're not doing that and you're just plugging a guy in, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think Jameis Winston is the one I would pick.
Fair.
Of the group. But I don't want Jameis Winston mentoring the young player.
Unfair. If your one goal this year is to not turn the ball over as much, don't go get Jameis Winston. That's why I would get somebody like Garoppolo, who is just going to be Mr. Stand in the pocket and just like a better Mason Rudolph in a way.
Yeah, Mac Jones to me is Mason Rudolph. They are the same person. In fact, no one's ever seen them in the same place. I agree with the turnover thing, but if your number one goal is Arch Manning, Jameis Winston might be your guy. Number 7, run it back, riskier version, Will Levis, which I actually think I actually might move Levis up a spot or two on this tier list, even though I think we know what he is. Maybe I'm wrong on that because there is a chance for growth and progress, but I might have him ahead of a couple of other names you got ahead of him. But I do think Levis, if Levis is your floor for this entire franchise for next year, you could do worse. Again, you could do worse.
I would agree.
Not much to add there. Can you fix them? Is what I wrote down for tier number 6. And I would, so you have Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, and Justin Fields in here. I would take Will Levis over Lance and Zach Wilson.
Interesting.
I am more interested in Justin Fields than Will Levis, but it's a totally different skill set than what Brian Callahan wants to do.
Which is why I think Zach Wilson's actually a really intriguing candidate, because I think he does have a skill set that could match what Callahan likes. It's just he was so bad when the Jets put him in a little too early. He played well for a little bit, yeah.
When Rodgers got hurt last year, right?
He played well for a little bit.
Number 5, and this was actually kind of lower than I expected. But I don't disagree with their ranking versus the other names. So that's what I think is interesting. Basically use your top 10 pick, wherever that might be, to draft a quarterback. You have Sanders and Ward in there as obviously the only two that might be available in those top 10 slots or number 1 overall. I've said this and I'll say it again. I'll probably say it even more as we get further into our analysis of the draft class. Travis Hunter is the only athlete in this draft that is worth picking at number 1 overall, in my opinion. If you're picking 3rd, you're picking 5th, you're picking 8th, you're picking 10th, 12th, and Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders are available, I can see it. Maybe. Even then, I'm not sure either one of those guys is going to be a long-term starting quarterback and save your franchise.
And to answer some of the comments about Cam Ward versus Shedeur Sanders that we've gotten today, about why the perception among local people seems to be higher on Shedeur and national tends to be Cam, or vice versa, or whatever it is.
Because Rand Carthon leaked it on Sunday afternoon.
I think people tend to covet what they've never seen and tend to be frustrated by what they have seen. And I think that Cam Ward is a closer facsimile to not just Will Levis, but to the type of quarterback the Tennessee Titans have tended to have going back to the beginning of the Tennessee Oilers days. Of McNair was more of a gunslinger, and then Vince Young was a little bit more of a gunslinger, and then Jake Locker was a little bit more of a gunslinger. And they haven't had the traditional cerebral stand and deliver kind of quick decision guy. And Shedeur fits that profile more. So I think people who have been more entrenched thinking about the Titans, watching the Titans, tend to look at the thing that the Titans haven't really tried. I think Mariota might have been of that mold a little bit more than some of the others, but still not to the same degree as Sanders. Just being a different thing, try something new kind of guy.
I do think Sanders and Mariota, there's a lot of overlap in their their dossier, their resume as a prospect. Very tough, sort of a quiet on the field leader. Not as Shedeur not nearly as quiet as Mariota was. Nobody is, but very, very tough. Better athlete than you think. Accurate with the football. Unsure of how he plays in a pro style system. I think Sanders is going to be, if he gets in the right place with the right coaching and the right offense, I think Sanders has a chance to be better. I think Cam Ward is more ready right now. The problem with Cam Ward is he does all the Will Levis stuff. It's hero ball for him. It's off script. I can just do whatever I want. And they didn't make the playoff because of their defense and their coach, but they also didn't make the playoff because he's just constantly doing stuff outside of the confines because he's so confident. Yeah. Early in the season, he is you could tell how in touch he was with the offense and how in rhythm he was and how in control he was with the offense. As the season went along, I would love to know what the conversation is like with him and the scouts when they say, Did you feel the need to do too much at the end of the season? As the season went along, it felt like he was trying to do everything. And it was a lot of Will Levis stuff where it's like you drop back, you see a window that you think is there, you force it, it's an interception.
And to play Cam Ward's advocate here, like one of my favorite things to look at is that if you go through the last 4 or 5 years of college football and look at the 2 or 3 guys who lead college football in average time to throw, it is always top pro prospects. Like there are never any like just college football guys. It's never the guy from Kent State who's standing in the pocket 4 seconds at a time. It's been Kenny Pickett. It's been
Curtis
Malik
Rourke.
Willis. Yeah, it's been Kenny Pickett. It's been Malik Willis. It's been Caleb Williams. It's been Jalen Milroe. It has been guys who are getting picked or who will be picked at the top of the draft because if you're Joe Burrow and you've seen how long he can stand in the pocket in the NFL to make decisions, you're going to stand in for a while and make decisions in college because they have superior talent to their competition. Like you've probably heard me say this on this show before, but the way I describe college football to people who are just NFL fans is imagine if you looked at a football field where there were 21 guys and 1 superhero. Like that tends to be a great college football game. And so I think that when you are the one superhero, when you are Cam Ward or when you are Shedeur Sanders even, you're going to hold on to the ball a little bit longer just because you can. The best NFL quarterbacks adjust from that and become different players in the pros, or they're Joe Burrow and it doesn't matter. So that's a long way of saying I am not afraid of Cam Ward because he held onto the ball a little bit too long, or I'm not afraid of Shedeur because of that. But I do think that something will have to change about that.
Yes, I agree. And I guess here's my thought. And this is, I think that's a great way to set it up. I think Sanders was doing it out of necessity more. Terrible offensive line that never really got better, playing on a team that really was just backyard ball. There was not a lot. Like I know people, as soon as I say he doesn't know pro style system, everyone's like, what about Pat Shurmur? And I'm like, he's not good. I don't know what you want me to tell you. Cam, again, I think Cam, the other thing is and Eddie says this, about the ACC defenses he faced this year. Kyle McCord was better, number one. Also beat him head-to-head. But Cam put up insane numbers in the Pac-12 and at the FCS. I think Incarnate Word is FCS, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, Incarnate Word and Washington State, not exactly playing against NFL-type defenses, which does not stop Josh Allen from being great. It does not stop Ben Roethlisberger from being great. It doesn't stop a lot of players who come from that lower levels. It's not like an indictment or anything. It just is a fact, and you just sort of point that out. And I don't think either one is worth drafting. That is my now in the top like 5. At 12, if one of them's available and you've stockpiled 4 other picks, I'm worth. I think the risk is totally worth it at that point. It's not that I think they're terrible players. It's about risk reward and what else have you done for your team to build around them? Because right now, neither of those players is going to step in behind that offensive line on this team and find a lot of success. That's my theory on it, at least for now.
Let's move on to tier 4.
Tier 4, low risk, low ceiling. Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr. I like Derek Carr a lot more. He has a relationship with Brian Callahan.
Agreed.
But I think you could do worse than Kirk Cousins.
Look, I think that both of these guys are people who, if they are the starting quarterback of the Tennessee Titans, they will be bridge guy. Like, that is what they'll be labeled as. Hey, maybe this works for a year or two, or maybe we have the number 1 pick next year. Like, it will be transparent that the Titans are not thinking of this as a long-term investment, but that doesn't mean it can't work. I think that of all the people on this list, there is a really good argument to be made that Derek Carr had the best season in 2024 of any of these people. Now, he played 10 games, and the Saints were good for 2 of them, and that really inflated the numbers. But, nevertheless, you could do a lot worse than Derek Carr. And if Kirk Cousins continues to rehab from the Achilles and looks more like he did in his 23 self or pre-injury 22 self, all that stuff, eventually you could talk yourself into that as well. But I still think that these are the baseline. If this happens, you are talking about 2024 as a we'll see year.
Yeah, 2025.
25, yeah.
Yeah. Not to go back to this, but Jason made a good comment, and I want to chime in here. He says, I know I'm beating the drum here. Cam Ward is not like Will Levis, not in the data, not on film. His pocket presence is light years better. He hits tight windows, got better every single year. Number one, I don't think that they're the same player. I think he has some of the same problems on film that Will Levis had. I do think he is a more cerebral player that processes better than Will Levis. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think he's also
similar does not mean the same.
Right, and I also think he's more accurate, but there's no way to say he's got NFL pocket presence when you've played for Incarnate Word, Washington State, and Miami. There are no NFL pass rushes that he's really playing against in any of those situations. So, in fact, some of the things that got him in trouble was sitting back there and thinking he could just do whatever he wanted. So, again, I don't necessarily disagree. All right, so I like the Carr angle. I actually think this is a really good sweet spot for them. It stabilizes the position. It probably sets to your point, a low ceiling, but a low risk ceiling. And to your, I think the most important point for fans is if they win a couple of games and the season's more fun, great. If it's terrible and it doesn't work, that's okay too, because you might have a chance at Arch. Mm-hmm. But now that
or Drew Aller or Garrett Nussmeier or Nico, if you think of him, like there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks,
all of whom I would put ahead of, maybe not Nico, ironically, all of whom I'd put ahead of Sanders and Cam Ward and Jalen Milroe. That being said, I've talked to some folks who think Arch Manning's coming back for another year after next year, which I find very hard to project out right now. But we will see. Highly unlikely. This is a comment from Roskias. Is that correct? Am I saying that correctly? Highly unlikely Carr will be available. He's too expensive for them to cut, given they already projected to be $50 million over the cap. So
there's an out in his contract. There's a team option this year, and if one team is going to be willing to play salary cap gymnastics, it is the New Orleans Saints. I am a little bit surprised that Kai Harley is not a guy who gets looks at general manager search time this time of year, just given the way that he has played salary cap gymnastics as the Saints deputy. He's done a spectacular job of playing the numbers don't matter game.
Stoney Keeley with a Noah Fafita drive-by. I do appreciate that. Arizona's quarterback. Not sure he's an NFL player, but we'll see. The truth is, Eddie says, the truth is Callie doesn't have the luxury of a rookie quarterback. He has to win next year, so Amy won't axe him. Veteran is the choice. Okay, there we go. Brooks says no college quarterback is worth taking at first overall because they haven't proven themselves in the NFL yet. I assume he's making fun of me for saying that. Fair enough. I have opinions on players like Andrew Luck as the best player I've ever scouted starting at Rivals in 2005. Andrew Luck is the best football player I've maybe ever scouted. And I feel like I know what I'm talking about sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Hello, speaking as guy who preferred RG3. People can be wrong about stuff.
Exactly right. Look, I was that whole Baker. We're going to study that Baker Mayfield class. The Baker. Speaking of Sam Darnold, which is number 3, Vikings. Sam Darnold or JJ McCarthy. I don't think JJ McCarthy's available.
I don't either.
But Sam Darnold. Here's the thing. I know for a fact that the Tennessee Titans have scouted him hard. Sam Darnold. That being said, I don't think he's available either.
Yeah, the Vikings are a tier unto their own because nobody knows what they're going to do. There is a good chance that they just hoard quarterbacks, which nothing against it. I think that you could probably get McCarthy for a second-round pick at this point, which diminishing value is a good thing to get a first-round talent for a second-round pick. I don't think this team should give up a second-round pick.
A depreciated asset, yeah.
If
they trade down, here's a good question. If they trade down to stockpile picks, which should still be the number one priority for every fan, they need more than one player to fix their team.
Yes.
If you get a bunch of extra picks by trading down, and one of those is an extra second, I would take J.J. McCarthy with a second over Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe, Shedeur Sanders, anybody else we mentioned, Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, Dylan Gabriel, Kyle McCord. I think McCarthy's very young. He's played very pro. He's very pro ready, and I just don't think we know enough. I think the reason they keep him and Darnold is that he kind of missed this year, even from a practice standpoint. So I think that's a big one.
And my Darnold thing, I think he's a fine quarterback. I think he's probably a good quarterback, but I do think that you are better off trying to anticipate who will be this year's Sam Darnold, rather than overpay when Sam Darnold has already proven himself to be that. Which goes back to that Trey Lance, Zach Wilson tier of go bet $4 million on a guy who could have upside rather than bet $30, $40 million on a guy who what his upside is.
And if you're concerned about holding the football too long, Sam Darnold might not be your guy.
And also, let's talk about tier 2 if you want to talk about holding the football too long.
Look, I don't think the Vikings is an option, but we'll see. Number 2 on the list, and I didn't use your tier title. I just said, I don't know. Aaron Rodgers. Look, I think you could do worse than Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, I think you could do better than Aaron Rodgers. Do I think Aaron Rodgers would be a fun experiment for a year? Sure.
Look,
I think it'd be fun to cover, much like Shedeur Sanders or some of these other guys. Like,
if you look at his 2024 season as an aggregate, instead of thinking about the moments that we all remember, and by God, do we remember the moments? But if you look at the full picture, he had a pretty solid season. He threw for 3,800 yards, 28 touchdowns, or something like that. He is not MVP Aaron Rodgers anymore. But one more year off of the injury, this is a guy who can win you football games and who is going to bring a lot of attention to your team and who is either going to get everybody fired or get everybody to the playoffs. Like, I think that his built-in familiarity with Chad Brinker and John Eric Sullivan, if he ends up being the guy, does become something we need to watch, because I think that could help. The fact that you don't need to give him a lot of money because he already has enough money to buy as much ayahuasca as he needs, that is good too. I think there are a lot of reasons to think, oh no, that's actually just a really good setup. And then you can get into he has a house in Nashville and this or that, but like
it
makes sense.
Yes, it does. The two things that Brian Callahan, he lives here. He's got a relationship with the front office. Brian Callahan wants processing and accuracy. And with all due respect to everyone else on this list, including number 1 and 2, right now, Rodgers still might be the best processor of this entire list. Accuracy, I don't know. He is the most accurate quarterback in NFL history.
Yeah.
Let's like that's just a fact. How much does he have left in the tank? Probably not much. Although Nissan Stadium saw him throw a couple really nice back shoulder fades for a win this year, which is more than Will Levis did in the stadium. So look here, and this leads us into an interesting question that Z Dean asks, and he says, I got a couple comments here from him. He says, veteran is not the choice. What's worse than having the worst record in the NFL, being stuck in purgatory like the Steelers? I think there's a lot of Titans fans that would love the success of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Never good enough to win anything, but never bad enough to tank. What's the point of going 10-7 and losing during wild card weekend? Let me give you 2 major points. Number 1, fun. That's a lot of fun. That's a fun season. Winning 10 out of 17 games is a lot of winning, and going to the playoffs is a lot of fun. And number 2, it would prove that Denard Wilson and Brian Callahan were the right people for the job, in my opinion. Yeah. That is an enormous a point. What's the point? That's a lot of points, in my opinion. Are you on the same? You okay with that?
Kind of. So
10-7 would be an incredible season.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
I've been thinking a lot about Taj Boyd for the last 24 hours, which is just a thing that happens. I think that Taj Boyd is, because I was relating him to Quinn Ewers, of like somebody who put a program back on the map, who set a baseline of, at our worst, we can be this good. The Titans kind of need that right now, of like a baseline set of, this is our floor with Brian Callahan. And if you can set the 10-7 floor, or the 9-8 floor, or even the 8-9 floor, you feel really good about it. That's not to say that I think that they're going to do it, and that's definitely not to say that I think, oh, go get Aaron Rodgers, who went 5-12 this year. That'll make you 9-8. But like, I do think that there is value in not being the Steelers, not going 9-8 every year, but you do want to do it. Like, you'd rather do it than not do it.
It gets old after a while, but like it right now, it would be. I mean, I'm just looking at like they won 10 games. They've won 20 games the last 2 years. 10-7, 10-7, 9-8, 9-7, 12-4. That's their last 5 seasons. That would Titans fans would murder people for that.
Yeah, being in purgatory sucks, but like it's better than this.
Purgatory with a playoff bid every year is pretty nice. Eventually it does wear off. It wears off. But
not to go conclave on people, but there is a difference between purgatory and hell. There is something below purgatory.
Yeah, no question. Ask Dante. So you said Taj Boyd is so funny because I talked a lot on a lot of shows this past week after the Texas loss to Ohio State about Quinn Ewers' legacy. And when a program builds to a new tier of program in college football, you get the transitional piece. Chris Leak for Florida built to Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
Hendon Hooker built Tennessee to get to Nico's 5-star. J.J. McCarthy built to get to what is going to be Bryce Underwood at Michigan. Quinn Ewers built to get to Arch Manning. Yeah. You can do this everywhere. You can look at these guys that take a program, and Greg McElroy took Alabama and built them up to get to all the 5-star quarterbacks that they recruited. The following was A.J. McCarron, who won back-to-back championships, the only team to win back-to-back championships in the modern era. And, of course, Taj Boyd built to get to Deshaun, who eventually led them to the national championship. So I do think the transitional quarterback does elevate a program from sort of middle of the pack, underachievement, to maximizing their capabilities. And that is absolutely, I totally agree that that's what they're looking for. It doesn't normally happen in the NFL, but it does lead us to number one, which is Dak Prescott and Matt Stafford. And I don't think either of these are a possibility from like a percent, like what's the probability? I think it's fairly low. But when I threw out the trade, because Jerry Jones has expressed interest in Deion Sanders gave us a denial, where he basically was like, oh, that's super interesting, but probably not, but super interesting, which is how Deion says, maybe, how much you got, is what Deion's saying there. And I immediately thought, number one, the Titans need to trade back. You need a partner. And if the Dallas Cowboys have Deion Sanders as their head coach, they are sitting at 12th in the draft. I know that's farther back than most folks want to go, and I understand that, but if you can get a massive haul in return for it, you got to consider it, because he might want to draft his son and coach his son at number one. So you got to think about it. It's got to be a real thing. So that leads me to all the other questions, which is, what do they do with Dak Prescott, who's got an $89 million cap hit this year, a $67 million cap hit the following year, and a $61 million cap hit the next year? I just threw out a random trade on Monday on Twitter. Got a bunch of folks saying, hell no, you're an idiot. Stop having takes. Quit your job. End your life. Twitter's fun. But what I don't understand is missing the calculus on this. The calculus on this is, you need, number one, you need a bunch of prospects. You need an influx of talent. And moving from 1 to 12 is not a bad way to do that, especially if you get a 1 next year, a 2 this year, and a 2 next year, or a 1 the following year. You can get a lot of capital. That's number one. Number two, wide receiver and edge, the top 2 primary needs for this team outside of quarterback. At 12, you're still getting a good one. You could still maybe get Michael Williams or James Pierce or Nick Scorton off the edge. You could still maybe get Emeka Ibuka. You might be able to get, probably not Tet McMillan, but maybe Luther Burden at number 12. You could fill a need with those. That's a dependable prospect at that spot, and stockpile a bunch of picks. The Dak angle is interesting to me, because here's what I don't understand about people anti-Dak Prescott, because it was like, this guy is atrocious. All right, let me give you Dak Prescott's resume real quick, Nick. All right. 31 years old. He's played in the league 9 years. The only 2 losing seasons that the Dallas Cowboys have had since they drafted Dak Prescott are the 2 seasons that Dak Prescott didn't play. He gets hurt in both of those 2 seasons. They have losing years in both of them. Otherwise, they have 4 10-win seasons, 5 trips to the playoffs. He's won 76. He's 76 and 46, and all of his statistical production and winning and everything is way better than Ryan Tannehill at the exact same age they acquired him at 31 years old in 2019. To suggest that Dak Prescott is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, okay. I'm okay with people saying that he's not. He
was the runner-up for the league's most valuable player award last year.
But here's the thing. You are not comparing Dak Prescott to the almighty. You are comparing him to the alternative. And when you compare him to the alternatives that the Tennessee Titans have right now, we just gave you all of them. Dak Prescott is better than all of them, and he will give you a better chance to win than all of them.
Except for Matthew Stafford.
True. He is true facts. He is not a long-term solution. He is a bridge quarterback. And if you can get Dallas to eat some of the salary and give you a bunch of draft picks, you move back to 12, you start Dak Prescott for 2, maybe 3 years, you draft a quarterback with all that capital who has no pressure on him to win right away, and you have him sit behind Dak for a year, maybe 2, and then he starts as soon as you can get Dak off the books, which is probably 2 or 3 years. And you have Dallas pay for a bunch of that. I'm not suggesting Dak is the guy to solve the problems, but missing the calculus of that equation to me is mind-boggling. Yeah. Stockpile draft picks, get a guy who helps you win more now, and draft a player to replace him in a couple of years. I don't understand why that's not something every fan should be salivating over. I don't get it.
Right. The big conversation point that we need to have about quarterbacks and I was thinking about this last night. Speaking of me not having hobbies, anytime I have 5 minutes to kill and I don't know what to do, I pull up in a game of Yahtzee on the internet and just play Yahtzee against a computer. And I think about draft. Yeah, it's fun. 5 minutes.
How's that go? Is it like playing chess against a computer? You lose every time?
No, I win about 55% of the time. It's a game of luck.
Okay.
Whatever. But so I was thinking about drafting a quarterback as Yahtzee. Of like, there are a lot of people who are saying the best way to win in the NFL is by having the best quarterback. So every time you have an opportunity to go get a quarterback, you need to take that opportunity. To me, that would be the equivalent of when you're playing Yahtzee, just keep rolling until you get five of a kind. Just keep rolling until you get that Yahtzee. You can roll a straight. You can have 3, 4, 5, 6 right there and just say, oh, I'll go for my small straight. But no, I'm going to hold on to the 6 because I want to go for a Yahtzee. That is a way to win because it gets you the most points.
It's like playing Tetris. Like I'm only going for the 4-banger of Tetris. Like I'm not going to try to get 1 line or 2 lines or 3 lines, only 4 lines.
Or to appeal to the millennials in the group, it is like the old, oh, why don't you just only chase the snitch? It's clearly the most points. Like that is...
Are you suggesting that the kids are not playing Tetris and Yahtzee?
Millennials are not the kids.
That's true.
That's 30s and 40s year olds.
That's true. I'm a geriatric millennial. That's true.
So yeah, it's the idea of why even bother playing Quidditch with the quaffles? Like it is very much you just go for the thing that's going to maximize success the most.
Sounds
that
like
is
a Harry
not
Potter reference.
Yeah, that's what Quidditch and snitch is. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I've been talking about.
I don't watch or read them. So
I'm sorry.
I'm a Tolkien guy. I like Lord of the Rings. Way better.
I prefer it, yeah. But nevertheless, that is the strategy of just maximize the quarterback. Just go draft the young guy. Yes, it is the thing that is the likeliest to lead to immediate greatness. But it is not the thing that is likeliest to build the thing you want to do. And winning is built by building. There are 3 teams in the entire NFL who have a quarterback good enough, maybe 4, that we can say, oh, it doesn't matter what's around them. There's Patrick Mahomes, there's Josh Allen, there's Joe Burrow, there's Lamar Jackson. And you can quibble about if Burrow belongs on that list.
He does.
I believe he does as well. But so like people, I think Jason's the one who said in the comments of, oh, the worst gamble is taking a QB outside the first round. The worst gamble is taking a QB because they fail just as often as they succeed at such a high rate. Like the quarterback hit rate in the NFL, I've brought this up before. The last time that a quarterback was drafted in the top 5 and started and won a Super Bowl for the team that drafted him was Peyton Manning in 1998. So if you're saying, oh gosh, draft the quarterback, that's the way to get to the Super Bowl, it hasn't happened in 27 years. Like,
well, look, so it's taking me right back to the 2018 class, which I was already talking about. Baker Mayfield 1, Sam Darnold 3, Josh Allen 7, Josh Rosen 10, Lamar Jackson 32. It's all of the theories in one round of the draft.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold eventually played playoff games for other teams. I know Baker, I think, took Cleveland.
Baker did for the Browns in year 2
I think he took him for
yeah.
1. Josh Allen is an elite Hall of Famer, picked in the top 7. And one of those guys you talked about, which is a total process guy. Josh Rosen played in a grand total of 24 games and is out of the league. And Lamar Jackson was basically a second-round pick. So even within that one draft class with 5 quarterbacks, you have the entire range of stuff. And only one of them was taken in the top 10 and still on the team and playing well.
And to refute Jason's attempt at geek cornering for a second, yes, the data does pan out that majority of NFL starting quarterbacks are first-round picks. But that is just true of premium positions in the NFL, is that like majority of the premium talent at the premium positions are guys who are first-round picks. Z-Dean, what I'm talking about is guys drafted in the top 5, not first-rounders. So you're right that first-rounders have, but the position the Titans are in right now, top 5 picks. The top 5 quarterbacks, last 3 top 5 quarterbacks to win a Super Bowl ring with the teams that drafted them are Carson Wentz, who did it in a year he was injured and didn't play. Eli, if you want to count the technicality, he wasn't drafted by the Giants, but we all know he was drafted by the Giants.
Yep.
And then Peyton. Like those are your top 5 picks who have Super Bowl rings. Matthew Stafford won one later in the career, not with the Lions. It has happened for other people. But if you don't care if you're the Tennessee Titans, if you draft a quarterback who then goes on and wins somewhere else, you want to win with the guy you drafted. So it's a long conversation.
I'm looking at the top 20. I'm using just yards here for this season, just for the sake of this conversation. The top 20 quarterbacks in yards in the NFL. Burrow top 5, Goff top 5, Mayfield top 5, Geno Smith not first round, Sam Darnold top 5, Lamar first round but late, Mahomes top 15, Rodgers first round late, Justin Herbert top 10, Brock Purdy Mr. Irrelevant, Kyler Murray number 1 overall, Bo Nix top 15, Stafford number 1 overall, Josh Allen top 10, CJ Stroud top 10, Jaden Daniels top 10, Caleb Williams top 10, Kirk Cousins outside of I think he's 4th round, and then Jordan Love late, and then Jalen Hurts 2nd round. So you got Geno
it's a lot
Smith.
Of first rounders. I'm not refuting that. I am just saying that if you guys are in the comments saying that the number 1 goal is you want to see the team win a Super Bowl, the stats kind of show out that there's actually no real connotation to drafting a quarterback in the top 5 and then winning a Super Bowl.
So here's an interesting ratio number. Burrow, Goff, Mayfield were number 1 overall, correct? Kyler Murray was number 1 overall. Stafford was number 1 overall. That's 5. And then Caleb Williams, number 1 overall. That's 6. So 6 of the top 20 were number 1 overall. You can keep going down further. I guess Bryce Young would count. That's 6. And then you have Jalen Hurts, Kirk Cousins. You have Brock Purdy, and you have Geno Smith. So 4 of the top 20 outside of the first round, 6 of the top 20 number 1 overall. Yeah. So it's about the same. More likely to be number 1 overall, be top 20, sure. And
now we're speaking my language in the comments of, yes, if you want to say that the goal is not to win a Super Bowl, the goal is to build a team capable of winning the Super Bowl, which I agree should be the goal. Yes, you're right. Absolutely right. But if you want to be very pedantic and say the goal is to win a Super Bowl, then the way to do that almost never involves picking number 1 overall, because the teams that win Super Bowls are never near the first pick.
Matt Stafford,
they're just never near it.
Matt Stafford won a Super Bowl as the number 1 overall pick, but did it on a different team.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And Jared Goff could win one this year.
Yeah.
Also on a different team. So Joe Burrow is sort of like your quintessential number 1 overall pick. And he's one of the top 4 players in the league at that position. Like he's the Peyton Manning of our generation. It doesn't mean the other guys aren't better, Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, but like he is sort of the prototypical processing and accuracy, number 1 overall, immediately elevates his team and is competing for Super Bowls almost every year. As long as they can figure out their defense.
So that was fun. Read the article that we just read to you. Go ahead and click on it anyway.
Well, it's just like, I know you kind of agree with me on the Dak Prescott thing. I think, again, if you can get Stafford, I'm down with Stafford. I think he's better. I don't know what the acquisition cost would be. But again, you're not trading with the Rams. The Rams don't have the ability to go, like the Cowboys have the ability to have Dion on his team. And then if you're the Titans, you have the leverage at that point.
Yeah, the Stafford possibility is that he has an option in his contract. I don't think the Rams are going to exercise that, especially not with the late season run they've made. But there is an option, and Callahan has worked with Stafford before, and there's obviously all those connections. But not going to happen.
You should want Deion Sanders to be a head coach of a team picking in the top 15. Because then you have a leverage and a dance partner.
Yes.
You've got to trade out of the pick, and you've got to get a dance partner to do it. Could you move down to 3 and add like a second, maybe something else? Sure. But really what really changes the franchise, and you look at the Lions and the Niners and all these teams that have the Packers reloading after Rodgers and Adams trades, you need like 5 or 6 picks because you're not going to hit on all of them. But you need, let's say, 4 to 6 picks, and you need to hit on probably 75% of those picks, so 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 6. And they're all bona fide contributors and high-level players that start on your roster for the next 6 to 8 years, second contract guys. And then you figure out the quarterback situation after that. And in the meantime, if you can figure out someone who's going to bridge that gap for you, go for it. I didn't understand the pushback on the Dak idea because you don't think he's great. It's like, well, he's still better than everything else you could run out there next year. And you have the luxury of a potential trade partner. Again, is it going to happen? Probably not. But the calculus is what I'm concerned about.
Go to History Corner for a second. The last time that the Tennessee Titans organization put a person in charge of their personnel department who had previously worked as a numbers guy in Green Bay, it was Mike Reinfeld. And Mike Reinfeld's first year in charge of the Titans, they traded back a bunch and had like 11 or 12 draft picks. And that ended up being the draft that helped build those rosters from 2007, 2008 that went to the playoffs and were very competitive teams. The last time the Titans had the number one pick with a new decision maker was 2016 with John Robinson.
Also,
and they traded back of that pick, and that trade put together the rosters that ended up thriving from 2019 to 2021. So if we are looking at times the Titans have been good, it has almost exclusively been with this exact thing we're advocating for. Now, do I think that any of these guys are better than 2007 Kerry Collins? Who could be? But yeah, you do have to look at what works in the NFL, and the likelihood of winning the way the 49ers and Lions have is much more tangible and plausible than winning the way the Chiefs have.
And look at all those years, the Patriots, the Packers, the Steelers, the Chiefs. Look how good they've been, never picking in the top 15. And now some of that's Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and Patrick Mahomes, but you get my point. Stoney says, if this truly is a down class overall, how does that affect sort of decision making? I totally think it does. If your top 7 or 8 players are at a certain blue chip tier and there's a drop off, whatever that number might be, that has to be taken into account. I just think if you're looking at 12 as sort of the last place you'd move back, like the furthest you'd want to go back, because Dallas, you might be a trade partner here again in this hypothetical fantasy land geek corner, history corner segment that we're doing. I do think you have good receiver and edge options in particular in that 8 to 12 range. I think if those are the 2 positions you're targeting, you can still get a good one of those. I don't think they're going to draft another offensive lineman, but you could also get maybe the best offensive lineman in the class in that area as well.
And the crucial thing to talk about here when we're talking about trading back is that the picks will not be confined to the 2025 NFL draft. The most important factor of trading back is getting an extra first-round pick in 2026. Because if your strategy works and you are competitive in 25, then you have what Detroit had, where you go get Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell in the first round, Brian Branch and Sam Laporta in the second round. Boom, you're the best roster in the NFL. If it doesn't work out, you have 2 first-round picks heading into 26 that you can package to move up to be in position to get one of those 4 quarterbacks we mentioned earlier, Arch Manning, Drew Aller, Garrett Nussmeier, and Nico, if he's in the mix. Noah Fafita, if you want us to talk about him. Like, you will be in position to move up if things go badly, and you will be in position to stockpile great talent if things go well. That is the sales pitch. It's not about, oh, who do you get at 12 this year? Or, oh, who do you get at 3 this year? It's about, who do you get at 3 this year? And if it works,
plus,
how much do you have to use the force magnifier next year?
Yep. I think you need, out of this pick, you need a first rounder this year, a first rounder next year, and probably 2 2s. You need 4 picks out of this 1 pick. And if you can do that, these are all. Eddie says, why give up your absolute shot at the best player in the draft for a scatter shot of guys who aren't as shiny? Because the only reason you want that, they're not that good at the top of this draft. That's the whole point. Like, picking 7th is not that different than picking 1st. That's the whole point. So if you can pick 5th or 6th or 7th and get a player of close to, if not equal value, outside of Travis Hunter, as I've said, outside of Travis Hunter, if you can get an equal player at 6, 7, or 8, and then another player or 2, this is, again, and I'm not picking on you, Eddie, because a lot of this happened on Twitter and it's not real life, but like, it's the lack of sort of understanding the logic behind the plan that is the frustrating part of this. And again, I know it's just Twitter, it's not real life. I know the vast majority of you listening to this show are, Geek Corner fans and smart folks who read Nick and Paul Karski and watch the Hot Read podcast with Stoney and JT, and I get all of that. So you guys do a better job. So, not
an original opinion here, but the name we haven't mentioned when talking about Dak Prescott is Micah Parsons. And if that's on the table, things get a little bit more interesting.
So everybody said that, like, hey, I want the 2 firsts and Micah Parsons along with Dak. Why would the Cowboys do that? Just because
they would
size of the contract? Like, I don't understand.
They wouldn't. But if they have to pay off Dak Prescott without him being on roster, extending Micah Parsons will become very difficult.
Yeah,
I guess that's the logic there.
And I do love Abdul Carter, Eddie. I think Abdul Carter is the best pick for the Titans. I think Travis Hunter is the best player in the draft. I would prefer Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter at number 3. Trade down, let the quarterbacks go 1 and 2, add a second-round pick, and draft Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter at 3. I love that idea.
Let's bookmark Travis Hunter talk because I have some opinions that I've been percolating on. But let's do that some other time.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue and Sinkers Beverages. Make sure you check out both of those great and amazing local businesses that keep all this stuff free for you. Pay a couple of bucks for the Tennessean coverage from Nick Suss. He does a great job along with a few other guys over there that do great work. If you're a Predators fan, don't know why, but if you want to be a Predators fan right now, lowerbroadhockey.com. Again, a couple of bucks a month. You get great coverage from Adam Bingen, myself, Emma Lingen, Nick Keyser as well. Make sure you check that out. SEC Football Live with me and Stephen Godfrey. We'll be recapping the national championship game, which I do not have time to ask you about today on the show. I said we were going to, but there you go as well. Senior Bowl coverage coming up as well. 440 is going to be down there. I know the guys are going to be down there. I'm going to be down there. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll have a lot of good Senior Bowl coverage. We got the Titans coach, now the name escapes me, was named to the coaching staff. One of the 8 coaches is going to be from the Titans coaching staff. Perry Carter is the special teams assistant of one of the teams. So we'll have a coach down there. The Titans will. So lots of great stuff. Don't go anywhere. Support good local business. Support good local journalism. And thumbs up on the YouTube page, notifications, all you guys in the comments. Appreciate you all. Otherwise, have a great weekend. Enjoy the playoff football. And Ohio State or Notre Dame, Nick?
Ohio State.
Yeah, I know. It's a bummer.
I'll be happy either way. I will be happy either way.
I will not be happy if Ohio State wins. I will be happy if Notre Dame wins because it'll be more fun. But I will be happy based on my gambling habits if Ohio State wins by 8 points or more.
If Ohio State wins, welcome to what college football has become. Your ghost of Christmas present.
Just forget about the ghost of Mike Vrabel inside the building, y'all. Just move on. Move on from Mike Vrabel. For Nick, I'm Braden. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next time.